So Belltree Beginnings, there are a ton of different options for Belltree stands, and I've already heard from Anita and a couple of other people that they've got stands. Marlene said she's got a stand, but she hasn't used it very much. So we're going to start with an inexpensive option. Jeff was looking for an inexpensive option to do Belltrees on, and so we're going to start with that. So Belltree Beginnings, where to start. Even if you have a Belltree stand, a full-on stand that you're using, I find that the dowel stand, I will get to video more clearly, but just to give you an idea, so here's the top of one of them, but this is a dowel, just a basic dowel, and there are instructions that you have a link to get to how to create one of these. It's pretty easy. And again, we'll get to video here in a second, but these dowel trees are very inexpensive to use, and they are very portable, and they can be used a lot of different ways. So this is kind of where I start people to get them hooked on ringing Belltrees and get them just started to feel how it works, keeping it super simple for them and then building from there. And throughout today, you're going to see some examples. We'll talk about different things along the way about when this might be helpful. Things like processionals and stuff where having something simple to use can be really helpful. So that's where I like to start when I'm starting with somebody new to ringing on a Belltree, yeah. So the Belltree pole, as I said, it's inexpensive. It's a great introduction. It allows you to distance ring because you don't need to be near anybody. You can stand anywhere and ring with it. You can do more with less because you can ring multiple bells with one person. So it makes it super easy to get started with ringing with fewer people. Whether it's one or two, or you can, I've done quartets with these dowel poles. So there's a lot of different things you can do. It's very stable and easy to use. And if you look back at the beginnings of Belltree, and we'll be talking, I'll give you a little bit of history in one of the next sessions or in a later session. We'll see some videos where they're actually stringing up the bells and holding them like over their head and processing that way and ringing them. That's how my friend introduced me to Belltrees. And we took turns holding the Belltree for her so that she could practice ringing because we didn't have a stand for it. And it gets very tiring. So using a dowel pole like this makes it super easy. It's stable and it's easy to use, but it also supports the weight of those bells more efficiently. So you can process or you can ring antiphonally to add some mystery to what's going on. As I mentioned, you can do solos. You can also do ensembles. We've done up to a quartet using the dowels. And there's minimal space requirement. And that can be really helpful if you're in a crowded balcony on Christmas Eve, which I've been in that situation where there was not room for a stand. So I just grabbed my dowel stand and used that. And it's great for all ages. For kids, I would suggest cutting them down a little bit. They don't have to be, the full 36 inches long. Make it make sense so that they're not having to reach too far over their head because the dowel is too long or too tall. So you can adjust it by putting the cross arm lower for them. So it doesn't have to be clear up here. It can be lower with fewer bells on it or whatever. So those are some adjustments you can make for different ages. A couple of limitations. One of the biggest limitations, I guess, is you can only put one tree on a dowel pole, so you're limited to basically one octave. You can usually get about it depends on which octave you're in, but you can get 8 to maybe 12 bells. That'd be really pushing it, but 8, 9, sometimes 10, depending on what you're doing. But I would limit it. I typically load them in octaves or in just the bells that I need for that particular piece if I'm not doing a series of things with it. Another limitation is one mallet. Sometimes it's hard to get runs going if you need two mallets or if you're not proficient in doing two mallets in one hand. That would be the option. You could you could accomplish that is to use 2 mallets in one hand, but it can be a little bit more difficult, so a little more challenging for people. So I usually stick with just 1 mallet. Holding it for an extended period of time, it's better than holding the whole tree by itself, but there still is some weight or some awkwardness of holding onto the dowel tree stand for an extended period of time. The nice thing is that if you're a little careful, you can easily lay it down, or you can lean it someplace. Kath Wisninger also has created. She used a mic stand and created a way to mount it into the mic stand, so she had 2 hands free to do that. And I guess the other limitation is that if you have multiple pieces that you're ringing and they're in different key signatures, etc., then it takes time to take the bells off the pole. So if you're switching things around, it's not as easy as it would be if you've got everything on one tree stand. So there are some limitations to it. So there are directions. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing. Should have done that first. So for those of you who are, if you're seeing everybody's images, up in the, I should have mentioned this before, but up in the upper right-hand corner, there's there's a link that says Speaker View. If you click on that, then you'll just get to see me instead of seeing everybody at the same time. So it'll make it easier for you to just track or see one person instead of everybody that's got their video turned on. Optionally, you can turn your video off if you want, so that we don't have everybody showing up. Okay, so to make one of these things, I'm going to change my video to my other webcam. Yep, there you go. So I'm going to leave the bell sitting here, but so all this is a 5/8 inch dowel. And you'll find the directions available. There's a link on the page, so, and also in the Belltree repository, which I'll talk about later. So this is a 5/8 inch dowel, about 3 inches down. There's a hole drilled in it that's 3/8 inch. I have a 3/8 inch dowel. I actually have a ton of these because I use them for different things. But 3/8 inch dowel, this one's a little bit long. It's a 4 incher. I usually cut them 3 inches. That's more than sufficient for what you need. So you drill this hole and you cut these 4 inch lengths. The 5/8 inch one is a full length is what I use. So I don't have to cut them. But as I mentioned before, you might want to cut them if someone's not too tall. They may have trouble reaching the top bells if they're shorter. So you can always trim that down. So this 3/8 inch one just goes through that hole and creates a little cross. And because this one's so long, I'm not going to push it to center. I'm going to just leave it open on this side.
Hey, Karen.
Sure. Go ahead, Christina.
Do you have any suggestions on how not to split the wood when you drill the hole in the long piece?
Yeah, so what I usually do, good question, thanks. I usually wrap it with painter's tape to help keep it from splintering. And then I just put I actually have a little vise that I put them in, but if you don't have that, then yeah, the vise helps. If you can use any kind of a clamp or whatever to help brace it, that's going to help you a little bit. But the splintering, just using the tape helps a lot with the splintering. And then I just sand it a little bit, especially the short side.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions about making a Belltree pole? Dowel pole. Okay. So then the next step is creating a Belltree that's going to go on that pole. And you can see here I've got a number of bells. I have them sitting here the way that I'm going to put them on this tree. So C6, D6, E6, F6, G6, A6, B6, C7. So it's just an octave from C6 to C7. And I've alternated them on either side of the pole because that's how they're going to end up. So from C6 is going to be my bottom one, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, alternating back and forth. I'm going to move the pole out of the way for now. I'm going to start with my C6, and I'm just going to leave that sit just as it is. Actually, I'm going to put all the rest of them up so you can see a little bit better, so we have a little bit more room here. Whoops. So there's my C6. The next one is going to be my D6, so I'm going to take the first one from your left. And I would normally be where the camera is doing this, so I'm doing it upside down from me so that it's right side up for you. So this is kind of what it looks like from your angle. So the C6, I take the D6 and turn it sideways so that you can see the table through the hole. That's the key to making this work. Then putting that through the C6, slide it all the way in, turn it to lock it in place. Then I'm going to take one from your right. This is the E, so C, D, E is next. Turn it sideways so I can see through to the table, through the handle. Slide it through the D and turn it and lock it in place. And I just keep doing that. So the F on its side, through the handle, lock it in place. Next comes the G after the F. There's my G. Turn it sideways. Put it through the F. After G comes A. A6 through my G6. Turn it and lock it in place. B. Running out of table space. So there's my B. And then finally my C7. That's basically how you string a bell tree. And the C I'm going to lock in place as well. Turn it up. So now you can see the handles for all the bells. They're faced up, and you can see that you can double check. I'll point out a little gaffe to you that is kind of funny. For those of you who have seen my bio picture where I'm holding a bell tree, no one's ever pointed this out to me, but it drives me nuts every time I look at it. I have my B and A reversed in that bell tree. So I always double check C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Make sure you've got them in the right order or it's going to be confusing for you later. So now you guys are all going to notice that and call it out next time you see my bio. All right, so the handles are a little bright. It's hard to see the letters on them, but okay. Any questions on how to string a tree? So then the next thing is to put the tree on the dowel pole. So I start from the C7, from the top, and my dowel is going to go through the handle of the C7, and then it's going to go through the handle of the B6, through the handle of the A6, through the handle of the G6, F, going through all the handles. Sometimes you got to help it a little bit. All the way down to my C6. So I'm just going straight down through the handles. It looks like a braid of bread. Never really noticed that, but it's kind of pretty. And then I'm going to push the dowel all the way down, and the C7, let me get it down there a little bit further so you can see it. The C7, that handle is going to hook onto your cross dowel. That's what's going to hold it from sliding off your dowel tree. So you want to hook that top handle on the cross arm, cross dowel. And then I just pull it and set it up. I'm going to switch cameras back so you can see what's going on. Whoops. Okay. Here's my bell tree. Questions about putting it through the handles? So right now I have it just sitting, you can't see it because of the angle, but I have it just standing on a stool, and that works really great, or a table, either one, doesn't matter. A little too high. Try not to make you guys too seasick. So you can go ahead and ring it from here. So a couple things about ringing. First of all, if you have any, excuse me. Excuse me. If you have any bells that the castings are touching, I usually don't have that problem with mine, but if you do, you can use the dowels. This is why I have so many of these. This dowel, it's another just 3-incher. I'll stick that, like, for example, sometimes I have trouble with my C7. Get it in here. It's easier to do it when it's on the table, but come on, baby. Oh, well, I can't do it standing up. Hang on just a second. I'll show you. Okay, I'm going to bring it close so you can see. So this one, I just stuck this one through so that it's creating some space. So it's increasing the angle of the C casting away from the tree. And that at times will just help lift that first bell, will give it some clearance, especially in the 5s. This can be an issue where the casting starts to touch these handles below it. So you end up here getting touching in this area. By just changing the angle of that C to lift it a little bit will help with that. So that's another use for those dowels, and that's why I have so many of them hanging around here. I don't typically need it in my 6 and 7s, but it can be helpful. The next thing is mallets. And I have 3 mallet options that I use, well, that I have. These are a shorter handle, especially if you're playing close where you're holding this. And I usually hold it about here, kind of like a bell lyre from the old band days. I'll just put my fingers, if you can see, I'm kind of got my fingers on either side of the G6, and I have my ring and pinky finger tucked in, and I'll just use my knuckle against the F6 and just hold it right there. I'm seeing a chat. Hang on just a second. Oh yeah. So somebody said that it's not so much an issue with the touching with Schuleys because they have narrow handles. I've actually had a harder time sometimes with the Schuleys, but teach his own. It all depends on, like I said, there's a solution for either one of them. So if you're having touching, put in a dowel. If you don't have a problem with it, then you'll be just fine. Don't need to use those dowels. Okay, so fingers on either side of the G. My ring finger and pinky are kind of on the F6 handle right in here, and that's how I'm holding that so that I can, it's not very ergonomically correct, but I'm trying to get as straight of a wrist as possible so that my elbow is pushed forward, and that way the bells are free to ring without me being in their way. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, mallets. Because it's so close, the longer mallets aren't necessarily as convenient to use, so I oftentimes use these shorter mallets. The black one is kind of my go-to. I had a bunch of these, and it was really loud ringing in my basement, so I actually put a Band-Aid on this to make it a little bit softer. I wouldn't recommend it because now I can't ever take this. Well, if I take this Band-Aid off, it's all sticky. So I would just put some cloth on it or something instead of doing that. That was kind of stupid on my part, but I was young. The other one are these white ones, and I really don't like these. They're really bright. There might be a place for them, but I very rarely find a use for them. I almost always am using the black ones. Okay. Christina, go.
Karen, I was just going to say the white ones, the only
Yeah.
time I've ever used those is when we had an entire full choir and like a 16-piece orchestra and the Beltry. So in order to even hear
Anything.
the Beltry is when I use those screamers, but I completely agree.
Yep. Good point. Yeah, that I can imagine needing them then, but yeah, I'm not in that situation very often.
Yeah.
Cool. So the last thing is, let me set this down for a second. So I'm just going to lay it on the foam. And I also invested in one of these flag, get out of the way so you can see it, a flag holder, standard military flag holder. This is, you don't need one of these. You can certainly ring with it just standing on the table or with it standing on a stool as I'm doing. And I don't use these weight. Normally a flag holder, you would put it over the shoulder, but instead, I'm going to show you my COVID weight gain. I just wrap it around my waist and just have it here in center. So there's the cup holder. And then I just put the Beltry in that. And now I can process, and the weight of the Beltry is on my hips instead of on my hands. And now I can ring from here. So you can process very easily with this. I also like this like for Holy Week when you want a little mystery, or Advent when you want to do something and disappear, and it's that ethereal, they don't know where the sound came from. You don't have to worry about moving the Beltry stand or anything. You just take it with you out the back door. So that's one of the things I like about doing this. Questions? Music. Music, there's a ton of music on the, and I should have mentioned the repository before, but in the documentation that you have, there are links to the Beltry repository. There is a Beltry Google group, and there are many of us Beltry aficionados who hang out on that Beltry group. So we communicate there, we ask each other for ideas, we share ideas, a lot of questions. We found that we were hearing the same questions being asked over and over again as new people came to the group. And so instead of, yeah, that's the answer that we did last May or 2 years ago or whatever, instead of repeating it over and over again, we created a Google Drive that we called the Beltry repository, where we can put things like a list of music, melodies that you can ring on one string of bells. So there are, right now the melody list out there that I have is about 20. I've added another 10, and I have another, I don't know, 10 or so to add to it. So there will be about 40 of them when I get through this next round of updating that document. But there are a ton of different things there. So there are things like Come Let Us Eat. Oh, that's not it. Super easy. Finlandia, Amazing Grace, Jesus Loves Me. There's a ton of them out there. Christmas, First Noel, Joy to the World. There's a lot of them that can just be played on a single string, just on C6 to C7. So super easy to add them here. You can also do things like, I'm already running over to my time, so I'm gonna have to stop this session pretty soon, but there are a ton of ideas out there, so that's a place to look, and we'll share some more ideas as we go through the sessions today. So that's your beginning Belltree instructional. So we've created a Belltree poll, or you have instructions to do so, and I showed you the basics of it without actually doing it. I showed you how to string a Belltree. So there's also a video available that shows exactly what I did today. So you can access that from the Belltree repository. And then we put that Belltree on the dowel pole, and we talked about equipment that can be helpful, the mallets, holders, and spacers. What to ring? I didn't mention Barb Rocker's Grab and Go series, which I have here someplace. Oh, Barb. Oh, here. This was a new publication this year, the Grab and Go series, and there are pieces in here that you can ring on one octave. And there's some great, just really quick to learn, play on Sunday, Belltree solos and or duets. Okay. Seeing if I forgot anything else. I should also mention, before we move on to the next, you're going to see this slide in a couple of places. Is the resources slide. So for those of you in Area 7, this last year we created a Belltree loan program. So if you want to get started on Belltrees and you can't afford to get a Belltree, or you just don't know where to start as far as a stand and mallets and all that kind of stuff, we have a Belltree loan program now in Area 7, and it's through the Chime chair. So you can contact Michelle Finlan and get information on the Area 7 website about our Belltree loan program. And there are also on the repository mentors. A few of the people that are on this call are on the mentor list. And there are mentors from all across the United States, from all areas of Area Handbell Musicians of America. And so so we can hook you up with a mentor in your area as well to help out. Questions? You can unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one.
Do you have any tips on memorizing?
Yes, we could do a whole class just on that, Anita. So great question. And I am not the best at memorizing. I can tell you that right now. I tend to have my music handy, whether I need it or not. I'm kind of bad that way. But yeah, a couple tips on memorizing. First of all, I always look for patterns and things. So just like this, Come Let Us Eat, it's a repeated pattern, so that makes it pretty easy. It won't take very long for anyone to learn that one. So I will literally mark in my music, this is pattern A, this is pattern B, whatever it is, so I can start blocking those out and learning those parts. Also, I find it helpful to sometimes write in the words so that you learn to associate the melody line or the pattern that you're doing, whatever, with the words. So I oftentimes am humming or singing at the stand. Not always great when you're in performance, but if you help internalize that, that can be helpful. Repetition is always a good thing. I like to have, if I'm doing something with a keyboard score, I like to have my accompanist record it for me so that I can listen to that or download it from one of the HIC sites. So I have the music so I can hear it and record it. The Grab and Go series that Barbara did, this one, there are MP3 files that you can download so you can hear what it's to sound like, and you can use those to actually perform it. So you don't need a keyboardist if you don't have one available. So you can record without without that. Kath Wisninger's music oftentimes has accompaniment recordings available as well. But yeah, we could spend an hour talking about memorization.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other
Karen,
questions? Yeah, go ahead.
you mentioned earlier about doing Beltry quartets.
Mhm.
Obviously, that wouldn't be a written quartet where people are sharing bells. Are you thinking like using the 12 bell music?
You can do a variety of things. So there, in one of our later sessions when we're talking about bell trees and choirs, there are some pieces that have multiple bell trees associated with them. So duets to quartets. So we'll see some of that a little bit later. But yeah,
Okay.
I've used like four in hand music, 4 bell trees with their 4 bells on it, and meloding those. So that can be a way. I've also written for my class when I teach this in person on the dowel pole. I've done 2 pentatonic songs, Amazing Grace and Jesus Loves Me, one on all white notes, one on all black notes, so we can get the most use out of the bells that we have in the room when I'm teaching. And so those are both set up as quartets. They're not exactly efficient as a quartet. I would say they're more like a trio of bell trees and then a few extra notes, because when you get down to the 3s, they don't work very well on the bell tree. So those would be better just to be rung. But there are some different things that you can do that way with it, Darce.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?